Good morning. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and share more about our latest project.
It's so important to stay connected with friends and family, especially during challenging times.
To discuss her latest project, a psychological thriller generating serious Oscar buzz. The morning show, known for its blend of celebrity interviews and lifestyle content, seemed like the perfect platform for a seasoned professional like Johansson to promote her work. But from the moment she settled into the plush interview chair, something felt different. The usual light pre-interview banter was absent. Instead, a sharp tension filled the studio, something even the live audience began to sense. Jenna kicked things off with what appeared to be a standard opening question about the film. But her tone carried an edge. This wasn't going to be the typical softball interview morning shows are famous for. "Scarlett, your new film explores themes of identity and authenticity," Jenna began, leaning forward. "Given your own career trajectory and some of the controversies you've navigated, how much of yourself do you see in this character?" The question landed with the subtlety of a brick through glass. Johansson's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, her shoulders squaring just slightly. "I think any actor brings elements of their own experience to a role," Johansson replied, her voice calm but carrying a warning undertone. "That's what makes performances authentic. But I'm here to talk about the film and the incredible work the entire cast and crew put into bringing this story to life." It was a textbook deflection, smooth, controlled, and professional. But Jenna wasn't backing down. "Of course, and we definitely want to hear about the film," a co-host chimed in, though their smile didn't quite reach their eyes. "But our viewers are also interested in the person behind the performances. You've been quite vocal lately about authenticity in Hollywood, especially in casting choices. Some people have called that ironic, given your own casting history." The studio air grew heavier. Even the camera crew seemed to sense the shift. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was interrogation. Johansson's composure held, but her body language betrayed her simmering irritation. Her fingers gripped the chair's armrests a little tighter. "I think it's important to have conversations about representation and authenticity in our industry," she said carefully. "But I also think those conversations are most productive when they're based on facts rather than speculation, or attempts to create controversy for entertainment value." Her words were sharp enough to cut glass. Jenna's co-host gave a nervous laugh, the kind used to ease tension while acknowledging a nerve had been struck. "Well, we're certainly not trying to create controversy," Jenna said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "We're just asking questions we think our audience wants answered." And speaking of audiences, there's been a lot of discussion online about celebrities who speak out on social issues while also benefiting from the same systems they criticize. At that moment, the interview stopped being a polite exchange. Johansson leaned back slightly, weighing her options, continue deflecting or push back. Then something shifted. "You know what?" she said, her tone suddenly firmer. "I came here thinking we were going to have a conversation about a film I'm genuinely proud of, with a team of people I respect. But it seems like you've got a different agenda." The audience gasped. The careful dance between celebrity and interviewer had just been shattered. Jenna scrambled to recover. "Scarlett, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're just trying to have an honest conversation." "Honest?" Johansson repeated, her voice carrying a new weight that silenced the room. "Then let's be honest. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work. But instead you've spent the entire time baiting me into defending myself against accusations you're too cowardly to state directly." The studio froze. Even the production team behind the cameras exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling. "Scarlett, I think you're misinterpreting our questions," Jenna said, her voice losing some of its earlier polish. "We're journalists. We ask tough questions. That's our job." Johansson let out a humorless laugh. "Journalists? Is that what you call yourselves? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks more like a tabloid ambush dressed up as morning television." The accusation landed like a slap, and the room fell into a silence that was impossible to ignore. The morning show hosts prided themselves on being seen as legitimate journalists, not gossip peddlers. But Johansson wasn't finished. "You want to talk about authenticity? Let's talk about the authenticity of inviting someone onto your show and then attempting to humiliate them for the sake of creating viral content. Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? You're not interested in having a genuine conversation about the work or the issues. You just want a clip that will get shared on social media." The second co-host finally spoke up, their voice defensive. "That's not fair, Scarlett. We're asking legitimate questions that address public discourse around your career." "Public discourse?" Johansson's eyebrows shot up. "You mean Twitter trolls and gossip blogs? That's your idea of public discourse? Because I've been in this industry for over 2 decades, and I can tell the difference between legitimate criticism and manufactured controversy." Jenna tried to regain control of the situation, but it was like trying to steer a runaway train. "Look, these are conversations that are happening in the culture right now. We can't pretend they don't exist." "No, you're absolutely right," Johansson said, leaning forward, her intensity filling the space between them. "These conversations are happening. But there's a difference between participating in those conversations thoughtfully and responsibly, and what you're doing, which is essentially setting up a public execution disguised as an interview." The words carried a weight that made everyone in the studio understand this had moved beyond a typical celebrity dust-up. This was someone with genuine grievances, someone who felt ambushed and betrayed by people she had trusted to treat her with basic professional respect. "I think you're being a bit dramatic," the co-host replied, and immediately everyone in the room knew it was the wrong thing to say. Johansson's expression hardened in a way that would have made her Marvel character proud. "Dramatic? You think calling out unprofessional behavior is dramatic? Let me ask you something. When you booked this interview, did you tell my representatives that you plan to spend the majority of our time relitigating controversies from years past instead of discussing the project I'm here to promote?" The silence that followed was deafening. It was the kind of silence that confirmed suspicions and validated accusations without anyone having to say a word. Johansson seized it. "Because if you had been honest about your intentions, I would have politely declined and saved all of us the trouble of this charade. But instead, you chose deception. You chose to waste my time, your audience's time, and your own credibility. For what? A few inflammatory sound bites?" Jenna tried one more time to salvage the situation. "Scarlett, I understand you're upset, but these questions come from a place of genuine curiosity about how you navigate complex issues in your career." "Genuine curiosity?" Johansson's voice rose slightly, though she maintained her composure. "There was nothing genuine about the way you've approached this conversation. Genuine curiosity would have involved actually listening to my responses instead of simply waiting for your next opportunity to attack." The production team was now frantically signaling to each other, debating whether to continue filming what was rapidly becoming a public relations disaster for the show. "And you want to know what's really ironic?" Johansson pressed on, her words gaining momentum. "You're sitting here questioning my authenticity while conducting one of the most inauthentic interviews I've ever been a part of. You're lecturing me about honest discourse while engaging in exactly the kind of sensationalized bad faith questioning that degrades the quality of public conversation." The co-host made one final attempt to de-escalate. "Maybe we can start over. Refocus on the film." "Start over?" Johansson repeated, and there was something in her tone that suggested the point of no return had been reached. "You think you can spend 15 minutes attempting to tear me down and then just reset when it becomes inconvenient for you?" She paused, and in that moment everyone in the studio held their breath, sensing that whatever came next would define not just this interview, but potentially careers and reputations. "Here's what we're going to do," Johansson said, her voice taking on a finality that sent chills through the room. "We're going to have that honest conversation you keep talking about." The studio atmosphere had become electric with tension, as Johansson prepared to deliver what everyone sensed would be a devastating blow. "You want to know what honest looks like?" she began, her voice calm, but carrying an undertone that made seasoned television professionals nervous. "Honest is acknowledging that this entire segment was designed as a hit piece from the moment I walked through those doors. Honest is admitting that you had no intention of promoting my film or having a meaningful discussion about the craft of acting." Jenna opened her mouth to protest, but Johansson raised a hand that silenced the room more effectively than any shout could have. "I'm not finished. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about your accountability as journalists, as people with a platform that reaches millions of viewers every morning. What message are you sending when you use that platform to ambush guests instead of engaging in good faith dialogue?" The co-host tried to interject. "Scarlett, we're just asking questions that our viewers want answered." "Your viewers?" Johansson's voice sharpened. "Or your producers, who told you that controversy drives ratings? Because let me tell you something about viewers. Real viewers, people who tune in to morning television, they tune in for information, for inspiration, for a positive start to their day. They don't tune in to watch you attempt to humiliate people for entertainment." The camera operators kept rolling, aware they were capturing something unprecedented in daytime television. This wasn't a celebrity having a bad day. This was a masterclass in how to confront media manipulation in real time. "And since we're being honest," Johansson continued, "let's address the elephant in the room you've been dancing around this entire time. You're upset because I've spoken out about issues that matter to me, because I've used my platform to advocate for causes I believe in. And somehow, in your minds, that makes me fair game for this kind of treatment." "That's not what this is about," Jenna insisted. "We're trying to have a nuanced conversation about complex issues." "Nuanced?" Johansson repeated the word like it left a bitter taste. "There was nothing nuanced about your approach. You came into this with a predetermined narrative. And when I didn't play along, when I didn't give you the sound bites you were looking for, you doubled down on the attack." The second co-host made one last attempt. "Maybe we're not communicating well here. Can we find some common ground?" Johansson turned her full attention on them, her response precise and cutting. "Common ground? Here's our common ground. We're both human beings who should be capable of treating each other with basic respect and professionalism. The difference is, I came here prepared to do that. And you came here prepared to conduct an ambush." The words hung in the air like an indictment. Everyone in the studio could feel the weight of what was happening, the sense that this moment would be replayed and analyzed for weeks to come. "You know what the really sad part is?" Johansson said. her voice softening into something almost reflective. "I actually respect the power of journalism, of asking tough questions and holding people accountable. But what you've done here today isn't journalism. It's something else entirely. Performance art designed to generate clicks and controversy," Johansson said. Jenna made one final desperate attempt to redirect. "Scarlett, if we've made you feel attacked, that wasn't our intention." The response came swift and merciless. "Your intention?" Johansson stood up from her chair, and the simple action sent shockwaves through the studio. "Your intention was crystal clear from your first question. You intended to put me on trial for crimes you never bothered to clearly articulate, using evidence that consists primarily of social media speculation and tabloid gossip." The production team was now in full panic mode, unsure whether to cut the cameras or continue filming what was clearly becoming a historic moment in television history. "And you want to know what's really insulting?" Johansson continued, now standing and addressing not just the hosts, but the entire room. "You did all of this while pretending to care about the very issues you're exploiting. You're not advancing any meaningful dialogue about representation or accountability. You're just feeding the outrage machine that makes genuine progress harder to achieve." The silence that followed was profound. This wasn't just a celebrity tantrum or a publicity stunt gone wrong. This was someone articulating a critique of media culture that resonated far beyond the confines of this particular interview. "I've been doing interviews for over 20 years, Johansson said, her voice now carrying a finality that everyone recognized. "I've worked with journalists who challenged me, who asked difficult questions, who pushed me to think more deeply about important issues. Those interviews made me better. What you've done here today makes everyone worse." She reached for her purse, which had been sitting beside her chair, and the simple gesture sent ripples of understanding through the room. This wasn't just criticism. This was preparation to leave. "Scarlett, please," Jenna said, desperation creeping into her voice as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. "We can continue this conversation in a different direction." But Johansson's response cut through any hope of salvaging the situation. "No, we can't, because this was never a conversation. This was an interrogation disguised as an interview, and I'm not interested in participating in it for another second." The studio fell into a silence so complete that the hum of the cameras seemed deafeningly loud. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. A moment when the usual script of celebrity media relations was torn up and thrown away. The moment of absolute silence stretched on as Johansson adjusted the strap of her purse on her shoulder. The simple action carried more weight than any dramatic gesture could have. The hosts sat frozen, finally understanding that they had pushed one of Hollywood's most respected actresses beyond her breaking point. "You know what I'm going to do instead?" Johansson said, breaking the silence with a voice that was now completely controlled, almost conversational. "I'm going to walk out of here, and I'm going to do something you clearly have no interest in. I'm going to promote my film through outlets that actually want to discuss the work, the craft, and the meaningful themes we explored." The camera operators looked between each other and their producers, unsure whether they should continue filming what was clearly an unprecedented moment in daytime television history. "Scarlett, please don't leave," Jenna pleaded, the desperation in her voice now impossible to hide. "We can talk about the film. That's why you're here." Johansson paused and looked directly at Jenna. For a moment, there was something almost pitying in her expression. "That's exactly the problem. You think I'm here for you? I'm not here for you. I was here for your audience. I was here to share something I'm genuinely proud of with people who might be interested in seeing it. She took a step toward the edge of the interview area, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. This wasn't just someone leaving an uncomfortable situation. This was someone drawing a line in the sand about how she would and wouldn't be treated. But your audience deserves better than this, she continued, gesturing toward the hosts but speaking to the cameras. They deserve journalists who are curious rather than predatory, who are interested in illumination rather than gotcha moments, who understand the difference between accountability and ambush. The co-host made one final attempt to stop the inevitable. This is live television, Scarlett. Thousands of people are watching this right now. The response was swift and devastating. Then those thousands of people are getting a real education about what happens when journalism abandons its principles for the sake of viral content. Maybe that's more valuable than anything we could have discussed about my film. She was now at the edge of the interview space, just steps away from walking off the set entirely. The production team was in chaos, some signaling to cut to commercial, while others insisted they keep rolling to capture whatever happened next. You want to know what's really tragic about this whole situation? Johansson said, turning back one final time. I actually believe in the power of difficult conversations. I believe in being challenged, in having to defend my choices and my positions. But what you've done here isn't challenging. It's just cruel. The words landed with the force of a final verdict, and everyone in the studio understood there would be no coming back from this moment. The film I came here to discuss deals with themes of integrity, of standing up for your principles even when it's difficult, she continued. I guess life imitates art more than I realized. With that, she turned and began walking toward the exit, her heels clicking against the studio floor in a rhythm that would be replayed in countless news segments and social media posts in the hours to come. Scarlett, wait! Jenna called out, but her voice seemed to echo in the space Johansson had just vacated, both literally and figuratively. Without turning around, Johansson raised her hand in a gesture that wasn't quite a wave, but wasn't dismissive either. It was the kind of gesture that somehow managed to be both gracious and final at the same time. The cameras continued rolling as she walked off the set, capturing every step of what would immediately become one of the most talked about moments in recent television history. The hosts sat in stunned silence, clearly unsure how to proceed or what to say to fill the dead air. We'll be right back, Jenna finally managed to say, though her voice lacked any of the confidence that had been present at the beginning of the interview. As the cameras cut away, and the studio lights dimmed slightly, the magnitude of what had just happened began to sink in for everyone present. This wasn't just a celebrity walking out of an interview. This was a moment that would be analyzed and debated across media platforms for weeks to come.